What's up, YouTube? My name is Ghrei, and today I'm back with part 4 of What If Midoriya Had a Quirk. The reception thus far has been astounding for this series, and I am so glad. Making these videos is highly enjoyable for me, and the ideas I have for these sorts of series are insane! Therefore, if you like this series, slap the sub button and tick the bell to be alerted whenever another one of these comes out. In the last episode, Midoriya got the results for the entrance exam, and he came out on top with the highest score among all the candidates. He and Lemillion also discovered how his steam production works, and Bakugo vowed to show Midoriya as the fraud he sees our freckled fighter as. Now, let's get right into this! Midoriya, taking a shaky breath, stepped through the gateways of UA. Taking a few moments to admire the architecture of the school, he smiled and sighed. The score he'd achieved blew his mind even now. Despite the odds, he'd pulled out on top of his own accord, beaten Kacchan with his power. Pride filled his mind, but he didn't let that hinder his ego. In fact, the pride upset the green-haired student slightly, knowing he'd gained most of those points not because of some sort of talent or skill, but due to simply helping someone else. After all the training he'd endured, all the hardships he'd worked through alongside Lemillion, he hardly got to use any of his skills in the exam. It almost felt as though he were cheating. Though this, as the high school hero would soon find out, would be the least of his problems. "Hey, Deku!" screeched an all-too-familiar voice, and as the wispy teen turned to face the boombastic boy behind him, he caught a sharp right hook to his face. Getting knocked back a few feet and landing hard on the ground, Izuku held his now bruised cheek and looked up to see his tormentor in the flesh. After the exams went down, he'd all but forgotten about the self-proclaimed superstar. "What do you think you're doing here, Deku? This is my school, not yours! I know you cheated on those exams, so just admit it, you bastard!" Grabbing Midoriya by the collar of his shirt, Katsuki huffed angrily, steam coming off of the former's clothing. Malachite steam. Before he knew it, the Boom King was rocketed back by a massive impact from a now livid Izuku, eyes just as determined as the antagonist's own. "Kacchan, I don't want to hear it. I didn't cheat. In fact, I wish I'd put in that sort of effort. I don't even feel like I deserve to go here." "Damn right you don't deserve to go here, you nerd! You and your quirk are useless as ever!" This struck a nerve with the freckled fighter who, instead of attacking, froze. His body tensed, mildly revealing his well-earned physical gains through his jacket's sleeves. No, Bakugo. I get it. You think I'm useless. Everyone, save for a couple people, thinks so too. Matching the explosive irritator's gaze with his own, albeit tear-filled, Midoriya continued. His voice amplified far more than Bakugo had ever heard before. "But if you think that someone else's opinion is enough to dissuade me from helping people with a smile, then you're just as dumb as you think I am." Pounding a hand to his heart and putting on a strained smile, the top examinee stood up straight, taking pride in the loss of mental balance his argumentative acquaintance had previously been maintaining. "I don't care how little you think of me anymore, Bakugo. I'm going to be the #1 hero, and I'll do it with a smile on my face." Without waiting for a response, the wispy teen strolled through the school doors, leaving his childhood frenemy blatantly dumbstruck. That interaction had, at the very least, made one thing abundantly clear, which truly rubbed the Boom King the wrong way. Bakugo didn't have nearly as much power as he thought he did. After entering the hallway and finding his classroom, Izuku took a shaky breath. He was desperately hoping that nobody would think he was weird or weak. He couldn't handle another confrontation like that. He slid open the door, only to run right into Ochako. As they looked at one another, time seemed to slow, if only for a moment. Faces blushing and composures crumbling, They stumbled over apologies to one another and congratulated each other for a job well done in getting into the school. Before he could take another step, the freckled fighter was halted by a small group of students. A young, all-pink girl with small horns on the top of her head, very cheerful and flamboyant. A young man with blonde hair sporting a chill attitude and introduced by the pink girl as an all-purpose portable charger. And finally, a gray-haired girl whose hands were held oddly in front of her, shuffling not too close to Midoriya, but giving him a sidelong inspection. Bombarded with questions such as, "What's your quirk? How'd you do that? Did you know about that second category of points? Are you the highest scoring student ever?" The green-haired crybaby sputtered over his words in a vain attempt to answer every inquiry before the room was silenced by the entry of their teacher. Standing lazily, cocooned within a dandelion yellow sleeping bag, stood a tired-looking man with shoulder-length black hair, unkempt and wild. His eyes were dressed with bags deeper than any student thought possible, and after using some eye drops, the man introduced himself as Aizawa. He lazily waved the class to the field out back for some practical tests. He didn't leave space for any responses after his final announcement before leading the students outside. "Oh, and whoever gets the lowest score is kicked out of the class. No questions? Good. Let's go get this over with." The tests were underway, and all the students used their quirks to their fullest potential, and everyone was impressed with Midoriya's ingenuity in said tests. The 50-yard dash saw the wispy teen launching himself forward with every stride on beautifully timed orbs, making the journey in just a few steps, scoring just over 2 seconds. In the grip test, he scored a whopping 290 kilos by temporarily amplifying his grip with more wisp rebound. In the long and side jumps, it was more of the same thing. He simply used his miniature fireballs like launch pads and skyrocketed in score. Throughout the entire testing period, Katsuki kept close behind, and at times even surpassing the freckled fighter in score. When it all came down to the ball throw, their points were matched with one another. This was the time to leave an impression on the explosive antagonist. Shoving Izuku out of the way, Bakugo grabbed the ball from Aizawa. Sneering, the Boom King took a breath, face becoming far more serious. Gripping the ball tightly, hands sparking harshly, Katsuki reeled back and hurled the ball with a massive explosion. Like a guided missile, the ball trailed flames behind it as it sailed beyond the trees in the distance. After a brief pause, the device within Aizawa's hand beeped with a bright, happy 1,029 meters! The crowd of students went silent, fully in awe of this stuck-up student's display. The wispy teen felt his stomach twist into knots, with a vicious sneer his titular tormentor shot him. Unsure of what to do, Izuku took the extra ball shoved into his arms by Katsuki, glaring at it pensively. The classmates surrounding him looked on expectantly, Aizawa analyzing his every motion. It was then that Midoriya recalled exactly what Lemillion told him, to prepare him mentally for these tests. "Midoriya, come on! If you're that worried about failing, then you should fail! Making mistakes is just another part of learning! And if you don't give it your all, you'll never grow! You can't go beyond your limits if you always stay below them in fear of failure, right?" All at once, as if by magic, the fear and panic, the pressure and anxiety that the freckled fighter felt had evaporated. Concentrating on the ball, he took a deep breath and stepped up to bat. While it was in his hand, Midoriya felt as though the ball were just another one of his wisps. And then, he had an idea he'd never tried before. This may make it go even further than using wisps as springboards, but seeing as it was untested, the analytical examinee was unsure if it would work. It was now or never, though. This would be the trial run. Winding back his arm, the green-haired student gripped the sphere tighter, and to everyone's surprise, it slowly became enveloped in a thin, malachite green film. The film erupted with a vibrant green smoke, and as Izuku pitched the ball, his entire arm flashed with a brilliant geyser of steam. Suddenly, the wind that would otherwise blow away the smokescreen seemed to have the opposite effect, The gas seemed to actually compile itself behind the ball. With a final push and a mighty bellow, Midoriya launched the sphere far into the distance. However, he wasn't done. As it reached its peak momentum, the wispy teen caused the thin lining around the ball to erupt, sending it far further than it otherwise would have gone. A last-second flare that the freckled fighter thought of on the fly. In sheer astonishment, Class 1A stared after the ball, which disappeared over the horizon. After the smoke cleared around them, it was another dozen seconds before the device in Aizawa's hand beeped. With an impressed grin, Eraserhead held out the reading as it beeped a merry 4,096 meters. The class remained silent as Izuku stood panting, light-headed but also ecstatic. He didn't even bother to look at Bakugo as he walked back into line. His arms were shaking with a combination of exhaustion and exuberation, and he had a right proper smile on his face. Aizawa's own was well hidden as he turned to face the green-haired student. Bakugo was immobile due to a combination of being regretfully impressed and downright infuriated, and the remainder of the students were slack-jawed and speechless. From behind the school's window, Lemillion grinned widely, pumping a fist into the air. "Izuku, you never cease to amaze me!" However, before another student could begin their throw, a flash of sharp pain rang throughout Izuku's body. He crumpled to the floor, fully unconscious, and was barely caught by the gray-haired girl from earlier. Aizawa sighed, clearly disappointed, before directing Ochako and Raiko to carry the wispy teen to the nurse's office. "At least that kid has some semblance of potential," muttered the tired teacher, gesturing for the next student to step up to bat. And that's it! What do you guys think? How will Midoriya fare in UA? Will Aizawa be even more unrelenting on the boy in this timeline? How will All Might react? Leave a comment down below and let me know. Thank you all for watching! Y'all are beautiful people. You guys are amazing, you should feel amazing, and we will see you in the next video. And goodbye!